Let's not tiptoe into this one. Let's dive straight into the shockwave. Angela Levin didn't just drop a story. She lit the royal fuse. With a single razor-sharp statement, the veteran royal biographer didn't merely question Meghan Markle's motives. She cracked open the carefully lacquered shell of the Sussex fairy tale. And what spilled out? Not romance, not rebellion, but a calculated plan, one that may not have started with Prince Harry at all. Because if Levin's sources are right, the Duchess who captivated the world's most eligible bachelor might have first set her sights on someone even higher, Prince William. Yeah, you heard that right. The heir, not the spare. And from that one explosive claim, every chapter of the royal soap opera suddenly looks very different.
So it's a message to Harry, don't come in and start shouting at me and demanding that, years later that we still apologise to Meghan.
It started quietly, a comment buried deep in a radio interview, the kind of offhand remark that slips past the noise until suddenly it doesn't. Angela Levin wasn't being dramatic. She wasn't teasing headlines or chasing clicks. Her tone was calm, measured even, but her words detonated like a controlled explosion. This wasn't a gossip columnist stirring the pot. This was a veteran royal biographer, a woman who's walked palace corridors, shared tea with aides, and listened to whispers that never make it into official transcripts. She's not an outsider speculating. She's an insider translator. And what she said flipped the entire Sussex fairy tale on its head. Levin claimed that Meghan Markle's royal story didn't begin with Harry's bright smile or that famous blind date. It began earlier, long before introductions were made, before the cameras, before the ring.
I think she wants to go, she can tick the people she meets so that she can then talk about them and say, well, this is my very best friend.
According to Levin, Meghan's fascination in the royal family wasn't about romance. It was about reach. The information, she said, didn't come from gossip bloggers or anonymous online chatter. It came from people who witnessed things firsthand, attendants, aides, and private staff who observed Meghan up close during those early encounters. They didn't describe a woman overwhelmed by royal grandeur. They described someone taking notes. Strategic, poised, focused, like a chess player studying her opponent, not for attack, but for entry. She was reading the room, one insider reportedly said, but not in the way most people do.
Definitely a network thing, because it's very important, because she has to step from one person to another, and people don't really hang around. She uses them and then she moves on.
It wasn't starstruck admiration. It was an assessment. Every glance, every carefully placed compliment, every effortless laugh. It was all part of a performance so subtle it barely looked like one. Not flirtation, not friendliness, something far sharper. Charm used as a tool, precision dressed as warmth. A choreography of approach, deliberate but never direct. Those who were there say she positioned herself at the perfect distance. Close enough to be noticed, never close enough to be questioned. She didn't rush. She didn't chase. She observed. A masterclass in proximity, the art of being visible without appearing eager. To some, it looked like ambition cloaked in elegance. To others, it was simply brilliance. A woman who understood, perhaps better than anyone else, how power truly circulates behind palace doors.
Rather distasteful, in the same way where Meghan goes to poor places where children are poor, that she wears, jewellery and clothes worth several £1,000s.
Right. To understand how shocking that is, you have to recall who Meghan Markle was before she became a royal. She wasn't a naive newcomer stumbling into privilege. She was an actress who'd already spent years navigating the velvet ropes of Hollywood. Red carpets, charity galas, political fundraisers. She knew exactly how elite circles operated, how access could change everything. By the time she was seen at events that brushed against the royal orbit, charity appearances, social gatherings, she already understood one rule. Where you stand determines what you see. So she positioned herself well. Levin's sources claim Meghan made sure to know where the Cambridges would be. What events, what causes, which rooms they'd attend. She wasn't crashing the party. She was being seen in the right places.
But they probably stayed at Soho House, which is there, which is Meghan's very, very good friend, and where she met Harry before it was announced, way back in London.
And that's when William noticed, not in a romantic way, but with the sharp instinct of a man trained from birth to spot an agenda. Those who know William say he clocked it instantly. Polite but cautious. Cordial but distant. He'd seen that kind of charm before. the kind that isn't about connection but advancement. And Kate? She noticed too. Imagine the chill of being watched, not with envy, but evaluation. That quiet tension between two women at the same table, one already a future queen, the other scanning the chessboard for her next move. That's not a sisterhood waiting to bloom. That's a silent duel wrapped in designer smiles. When William kept his distance, something shifted. Enter Prince Harry, the spare, the rebel, the emotional heart of the monarchy. A man who wore his scars in the open and longed for something real. He wasn't just charming, he was vulnerable. And that vulnerability was an open door. Within weeks of meeting Meghan, the headlines exploded. Whirlwind romance, secret trips, engagement whispers. The public swooned. It was Cinderella meets Kensington Palace. But Angela Levin's version suggests something else entirely. That when one door closed, another royal one opened. Harry became the perfect pivot. Still royal, still powerful, but emotionally more available. A man eager to prove he could build something outside the gilded cage. To him, Meghan wasn't an outsider. She was saved. And for Meghan, it wasn't just love. It was opportunity reborn. From that point, the pace was dizzying. Engagement, wedding, baby, global fame. But speed, Levin says, wasn't romance. It was strategy. Every step, from the first public appearance to the Netflix deals years later, looks, in hindsight, like a race against the clock to secure a new kind of royal relevance. The world wanted to believe the fairy tale. The rebel prince and the Hollywood star, a love story fit for the digital age. It had all the right ingredients: romance, rebellion, reinvention. The palace called it a modern monarchy. The press called it a new era. And for a while it was magic, a picture-perfect illusion that sparkled on magazine covers and wedding broadcasts seen by millions. But beneath the glamour, something else was forming. Hairline cracks, at first invisible, then impossible to hide. Whispers began to leak out of the palace walls. Not from enemies, but from those who saw everything. The aides, attendants, and staffers who live in the shadows of royal life. They described Meghan's warmth as conditional. Her charm, they said, was precise, dazzling in public, but cool behind the scenes. And for Kate, the woman who was supposed to become her royal sister, there was no sisterhood. No bond. No whispered confidences behind closed doors. What the cameras caught, those polite smiles, the studied small talk, the distance between them, it wasn't media exaggeration. It was the reality leaking through the performance. Every joint appearance became its own silent duel. Kate, with her practiced grace, every step deliberate, every glance measured. Meghan, perfectly polished, but with an energy that suggested she wasn't content to play supporting roles. The press saw contrast, but insiders saw competition. And now, with Angela Levin's revelation resurfacing, that Meghan's fascination with the royal family may have predated Harry himself.
Publicity.
Similar happened to Catherine, didn't it? Oh, years ago when she was in France, and that caused a big hoo-ha, of course. There was someone with a massively long lens somewhere, and I can understand that. You don't want, your private holiday, but you think maybe it's more of a networking thing.
Those old clips take on a new meaning. What once looked like discomfort now looks like defense. What once seemed like two women struggling to connect now seems like one woman trying to protect her territory. Kate, the ultimate royal realist, might have sensed it early, that this wasn't a friendship destined to bloom. That Meghan's entry wasn't about belonging, but about positioning. And in the palace, where every smile is strategy and every alliance has consequence, keeping her distance wasn't coldness. It was self-preservation. Because if Levin's sources are right, if Meghan wasn't simply joining the royal family, but auditioning for its starring role, then Kate's restraint wasn't just wisdom. It was instinct. And for the monarchy, that instinct may have saved more than just her peace. It may have preserved the crown's balance in the face of its most glamorous challenge yet. What makes Levin's claim sting isn't just the accusation, it's the pattern. Even before Harry, Meghan's story had a rhythm. A steady climb through connection, a rise through association. Her marriage to Hollywood producer Trevor Engelson gave her a foothold in the industry. When that ended, the glow-up began. New publicists, new social circles, new power friends. Every move brought her closer to the upper tiers of fame and influence. And after she entered royal life, the pattern didn't stop, it evolved. The charity appearances, the global speeches, the Netflix and Spotify deals. Each one looked like a step toward something bigger, something beyond the crown itself. Levin's framing makes it clear. Meghan doesn't just build relationships, she builds ladders. It's not inherently wrong. Ambition isn't a sin. But when that ambition is dressed in romance, the betrayal feels personal, especially to a public that fell headfirst into the Sussex fairy tale. Normally, when Meghan faces a headline storm, her team moves fast, precision PR, expertly timed statements, and the kind of language that feels polished down to the comma. A friendly journalist might happen to drop a sympathetic quote. A source close to the couple might suddenly emerge to redirect the fire. It's a familiar dance: deny, deflect, distract. But this time, nothing. No statements. No friendly insider sources. No social media posts from allies in Hollywood. Just silence. And here's the thing. In the world of public image, silence is never neutral. It's either a strategy or an admission. Because silence doesn't stop the story, it amplifies it. The longer Meghan stays quiet, the louder the speculation becomes. Every paused word, every unspoken defense starts to sound like a quiet confirmation. Critics are already calling it her soft confession, the kind that never needs to be spoken out loud. Supporters, on the other hand, insist it's exhaustion. They say she's done trying to fight every narrative, that she's choosing peace over headlines. But whatever the reason, that silence has power. It's reshaping how people see her, and how they see him. Because if Meghan's connection to the royal family really began before Harry ever entered the frame, if her interest was calculated, not romantic, then what does that make Harry in this story? Was he the fairy tale prince who saved her? Or was he the pawn in a much bigger plan? The plan B, the backup route into royalty once the first doors closed? It's a question that's beginning to sting. Because of Harry's exile, his heartbreak, his rebellion against the palace, all stem from a story that began as calculation rather than love. Then everything changes. The narrative flips from tragedy to strategy. And that, for the couple who built their brand on truth and authenticity, is the most dangerous twist of all. For Harry, the man who walked away from the palace to protect his wife, this revelation cuts deeper than any headline. He staked everything, family, country, legacy, on love. And if that love turns out to have been born from strategy, not sincerity, then every decision since becomes a heartbreak on repeat. The interviews, the Netflix specials, the memoir, all of it framed around pain, honesty, and redemption. But what happens if the foundation wasn't truth, but illusion? Levin's claim has done what no royal feud, no media scandal ever managed to do. It's made people question the beginning of the story. And when the beginning collapses, everything built on top of it starts to crumble. Inside the palace, the mood is quietly vindicated. For years, aides were accused of coldness, of cruelty. Now, they're watching this play out with a grim sense of confirmation, like witnesses who can finally say, "We saw this coming." They don't need to speak. The silence, this time, works in their favor. Here's the cruel truth about royal life. Perception matters more than proof. The public doesn't need receipts, just a story that feels real. And Angela Levin has given them exactly that. Whether Meghan ever truly set her sights on William might never be proven. But it doesn't have to be. The image alone of a woman plotting her entry into the House of Windsor, recalibrating from heir to spare, is enough to seed doubt. And doubt spreads fast. It doesn't ask for evidence. It just whispers. It turns fairy tales into puzzles, love stories into headlines, and sincerity into strategy. The brand that once sold love and liberation now carries the scent of calculation. And in the court of public opinion, that's fatal. Because once people stop believing in the love story, everything else loses its magic. So here we are. The Duchess who conquered Hollywood, charmed a prince, and took on the crown now faces her most dangerous opponent yet, doubt. Not a scandal, not a lawsuit, but something quieter and more corrosive. Angela Levin didn't destroy the Sussex brand. She simply pointed at the cracks, and the world started looking closer. And maybe that's the real tragedy of this tale. Not the ambition, not the manipulation, but a love story built so high, so fast, that it couldn't withstand a single question. Because if it's true, if Meghan once looked past Harry toward William, then Harry isn't just the heartbroken prince of a modern tragedy. He's the man who gave up everything for someone who might never have truly chosen him first. And that, more than any royal scandal, is the heartbreak that lingers long after the cameras stop rolling. This is The Tatler, where the crown may glitter, but the truth, it always cuts deeper.